Good morning and welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today for this hopefully very exciting webinar on how to effectively manage your employer brand. I'm Mark, I'm the COO for Rent a Recruiter, and I'll be your host for this event, but more importantly, I'll be the timekeeper. For those of you who don't know who we are, Rent a Recruiter takes the headache out of recruitment for companies. We partner with teams from small HR departments to large talent acquisition functions. We embed our recruiters in your organization through recruitment as a service to reduce cost and time per hire. And we have helped over 100 companies to date to achieve their hiring goals. I do appreciate everyone kind of taking the time to attend today because I know everyone has a busy schedule. But I'm trying to make this super informative and very practical for everyone, for the audience, which is mainly made up of HR professionals and talent acquisition professionals. So you're all very welcome. Our goal today is to provide really with actionable strategies to manage your employer brand effectively. We have a really great lineup of speakers as well, which I'll introduce in a bit, Brendan, Gillian, and Kevin. Each of them brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to working with clients on their employer branding journey or taking their company on that journey themselves. We've structured the webinar under 4 key areas. Something free, which is a strategy or tool that can be implemented without any cost. And then something quick, a quick win solution that can yield immediate results. Something slow, a more time-intensive strategy that offers significant long-term benefits. And then something with a cost. So if you want to bypass it all and just throw money at the problem, investment in tools or services that can greatly enhance your branding efforts. Before we start, just a few housekeeping rules. So each speaker will speak for about 2 to 3 minutes about each section to answer their question. After that, we're going to open the floor up to questions and answers. So there is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you'd like to just drop a question in there, Julianne, our marketing manager, will make note of it, and I will keep a few questions aside. Hopefully we get to maybe go through 2 or 3 questions at the end of this webinar. And lastly, this webinar is recorded, and the link will be shared with anyone who signs up. My hope is to also create a strategy guide from this conversation, which we'll be able to get out to you at a later date. So first of all, without further ado, I'm going to introduce the speakers. First, we have Gillian Horan. She's the founder and CEO of The Pudding. Gillian is an expert in brand strategy, employer branding, and cultural development. Through her work in The Pudding, she has partnered with a wide range of organizations to help them clearly define their branding, both internally and externally, ensuring that what they promise to customers and what they offer their employees is fully aligned. So really appreciate you being here, Gillian, with us today. Next, we have Kevin Brennan. He's a national account manager at Indeed. Everyone knows who Indeed are in Glassdoor. Kevin has spent the past decade advising some of Ireland's largest and most successful employers on how to attract and retain talent through data-driven insights. Working at the heart of Ireland's largest job site, Kevin brings unique perspective on candidate behaviour trends, recruitment marketing best practice, and how companies can optimize their online presence and stay competitive in today's talent market. So appreciate you being here as well, Kevin, for this. And finally, we have Brendan Ring. He's the Chief People Officer for Otonomee. For people who don't know who Otonomee are, they're a global BPO company that are expanding like crazy at the moment. Brendan has an impressive background in HR leadership, specializing in building high-performing global distributed teams. At Otonomee, he plays a key role in shaping this remote-first culture because they're a remote company, which I think is very interesting as well to discuss, and supporting flexibility, collaboration, and sustainable growth. So thank you, Brendan, for being here today as well. Between them, I suppose they all offer a mix of branding expertise, and with Gillian and Kevin, we're looking more at their work with clients. And then from Brendan's perspective, we're looking at that internal piece as well. But also Gillian and Kevin will also have their own opinion on that as well. So we're going to get started straight away. I'm going to jump straight into it. The first thing is something free. So a strategy or tool that can be implemented without cost. Brendan, you're first on my list. What have you got for us today?
Thanks, Mark. Good to be here. Thanks for the invite. So I've got a really simple one. So I think, as you mentioned there, I suppose what's key from you and I think of employer brand is, and I think a lot of when they think of employer brand, they think of externally. Okay, so what I'm going to do is a little bit of a twist on it today, and I suppose the examples I'm going to give are things that you can do internally, okay, that have a huge impact on employer brand. All right, so the first one is a real simple one, but I think one that we maybe at times underestimate is recognition, okay, and building a culture of recognition. So for us, at Otonomee, it's a critical piece to our employer branding. Like, there's a number of benefits to it, as we all know, but I think like if you think about to give two, one is you can capture those moments of employee recognition, okay, which are like real great content, okay, around like who you are and what you are. And the second one is very much around how that then employee takes that information, that feeling of being recognized, and tells people about it. Okay, so you know, people telling people about their experiences in employment are like such a nugget of for your employer branding. So, you know, for me, very much that recognition piece and putting a huge focus on the recognition plays a critical part. As well as that, probably in the same space as that recognition is in, like, sometimes we can be shy around asking customers for recognition. Okay. And so my call to action here is don't be. Okay, if you're doing a really great job for your customer, ask them for recognition. Okay, ask them. Don't. The worst that someone can say is no. All right, so you know, ask them for it. Okay. So yeah, I think that's my main point, Mark.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for that, Brendan. Can I ask just a question I have in my mind, because
Yeah.
you're a remote business, like how do you capture those moments? Because you're not in an office where it's someone's birthday or someone has an anniversary and all that too. So how do you do it in a remote setting, I suppose? Do you find it more challenging?
No, not really. I think once you set the expectation about capturing moments, so like we're capturing a moment here, right? So this is how we would usually capture moments in terms of recognition. We do like recognition awards, for example, and we capture that. Things like certs that we give out or swag that we give out for recognition. Okay, that's all captured, if you know what I mean, right? And sometimes maybe we don't think of that as like capturing the moment, but of course it's capturing it. Anything that you can get and share or take a screenshot and share is capturing that moment. All right. So I'll talk later about tools as well that we use. I think that's probably in my last example. We use a tool called WorkVivo for example, that allows us to capture that culture, no matter what the geography you are, no matter the time you work. So that's another way of.
Oh, thanks so much, Brendan. Yeah, thanks. I'm looking forward to hearing that later. Gillian, you're up next, I suppose, like that. What's your, I suppose, strategy or free tool with no cost? Yeah.
Yeah, so what I would say, I'd build on from Brendan's point. I'm like, obviously from my perspective, I come from the brand, and I would talk about, even when I talk about employer branding, I talk about culture-led branding. And I think that's a big, we have to kind of move there nearly to really kind of bring the culture alive, because that's obviously what Brendan is describing. So to build on from it, I would say employee generated content would be a really strong area to go. So if you think about it, your employees are creators. Often a lot of them are. We're all creative anyway, but they could be co-creators in your content. And even seeing them so it's a mindset shift for people to think about their team as creators. So I have a couple of examples of even clients. I have one client, their staff, they're absolutely amazing at just themselves talking about their lives, even personally, and intertwining it with the business. And they really support each other, the company and the people. So even you're rewarding that, you're incentivizing for people to do that as well in terms of having that content. I have another company that we work with that they have little kind of competition going, in terms of how well the content, their individual content and personal content is doing on LinkedIn. So there's, again, a little bit of competition reward. They have meetings over it, break bread over it, have a slice of pizza over it and chat about it. And then I have another company, and they're really interesting in terms of looking at it through the lens of the work that they do. So it's personal, but there's a group of them that are on a project, a really cool engineering project, but they're kind of documenting it as they go through and taking other engineering nerds kind of through it who follow them on LinkedIn, because you want to grab more engineering nerds to maybe come into the team or other teams. So it's a lovely personal way to express the employer brand or culture-led brand through this employee generated content. So for me, I think it's a really nice way. And there is so much content you have. I promise every single person on the call has so much content and so many amazing stories. It's just the time to do it all.
No, it's kind of like taking, even the recruitment perspective would be like, creating a referral program. It's kind of like using your network is always better than using agencies or any sort of tool at all. Like,
exactly.
It's very interesting. Thanks so much. Kevin, you're last. So talking from the Indeed Glassdoor perspective, I suppose, like that, what do you have for us?
Thanks, Mark, and thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I think to extrapolate on what Gillian just said around the employee-generated content, From an Indeed and Glassdoor perspective, Mark, a lot of employers don't realize they can actually respond to the reviews on the platform for free with no
Yes.
partnership. And to take it 2 steps back, rather than using Indeed and Glassdoor as an example, Mark, I hope everyone on this call has the opportunity to book a nice holiday this summer, or perhaps have booked a holiday last summer. And if you think about the journey you go on when you're booking that hotel, you type in hotel Madrid, for example, you look at the hotels that fit within the criteria, and you'll generally be heavily influenced by not just the reviews, but the star rating of that hotel, Mark. So,
Yeah.
for example, if you and me are running a hotel in Dublin, we're both side by side. Mark's hotel is 4 stars on booking.com, and my hotel is 3 stars. You're going to get significantly higher conversion rate than I would do.
Yeah.
So, from a review perspective on Indeed and Glassdoor, it's free and it's so impactful. We can help you build out canned responses to reviews that are bad, reviews that are middling, and reviews that are very positive. And then we can also show you the conversion rate increase were you to respond to those reviews, Mark. Because
Yeah.
in our journey as purchasers, we've all seen a review in a hotel where somebody's had a bad night's sleep or a bad experience. But if the hotel manager responds to that review publicly, acknowledges it, it takes
Yeah.
so much of the venom out of that negative experience. And that's something we're always trying to encourage our partners at Indeed and Glassdoor to do too.
100%. Like, unless they attack it as well, then you're like, okay, that's a double whammy. We're definitely not going to apply to this company. But yeah, if you and to be fair for everyone on the call, if you go on the Indeed website, they've got their Bible for best practice when it comes to responding to reviews as well. So it's very, very straightforward. Empathy, not being discrediting them or not be criticizing and all that too. So it's very, very handy. And I think as well, not we have time to go into this, Kevin, because I work with Indeed all the time, but they also think there's more motivation for someone to leave a bad review. So internally, it's very, very important that that first week someone starts, or second week, just drop them an email with the review link and say, would you mind leaving a review? Because they're in that honeymoon phase. They've just joined your organization. That's the time to hit them, not when they're disgruntled and they're leaving something, a nasty comment as well. And it's a very handy thing to do and get that star rating up. So thank you very much for that, Kevin. Really appreciate it and that too. As you can see, I suppose sometimes the most powerful employer branding strategies don't cost anything. And it's just about consistency, really, and authenticity. Now we're going to look at some quick actions that you can make that have a more immediate impact. Gillian, I'm going to come to you first for this one. Like, what's your something quick?
Yeah, I'm gonna change things up in terms of my own head of where I was going as well, just to kind of build on everything.
Yeah.
I think the recognition, I think it's really important to get the recognition out there, as Brendan said. So like getting, testimonials, that's all, like, I think that's super. So I think it's free, it's quick, you can do it. But let's have a little chat about AI. So I think in terms of maybe some of the stuff that's quick as well, like how are you using AI tools for you to improve the speed of your work? Because I think, we know it's all around us, it's happening extremely fast, the speed of it itself. So, I think it's really to just spend a moment, take a step back today and just say, what AI tools am I using? A lot of the systems you're using are using AI. So LinkedIn is using AI. The guys are, they're like, indeed, you're using AI, and probably Kevin can probably speak to that as well. But even, I suppose, you yourself then in some of your other tasks that's on your desk, your admin tasks, your content creation tasks. So using it to reframe something in terms of content that goes out, using Canva, ChatGPT, and I think it's, I suppose for me, and maybe we can have a conversation at the end, is probably trying to understand, and maybe even with the Q&A for people, how quickly people are adopting to AI would actually be really interesting. But I do think in terms of the speed of getting some work done, I think it's a really interesting place to be, as a person in the people side of work. And I think, I think it can really elevate your own job, your own, like that, the speed of what you're doing and what you're doing. And I think, it could be even things like, I'm always really a massive advocate for the business case, because I know the stats came back from your polls to people saying, we really need to make sure that we're getting buy-in from the business. What tools can you help you to even go and get your business case? Make sure you've got a seat at the boardroom table. But can AI help you articulate, help you draw and bring things together to actually be able to say, hold on a second, here's the data, let's put it all together, and now let's look at why this is important and why we're investing in it.
No, thanks very much, Gillian. I think that's a good point. And I think that, like, especially when it comes to employer branding, a lot of the time, even with these free things and quick things, it still takes a bit of time, right? And everyone's like, Gillian, where am I going to get the time? You make the time back using AI that allows you to put up posts very quickly, you know, and all that stuff too. So it is a very, certainly probably the most important tool really to use. And even just using something as simple as just ChatGPT, the
Yeah,
free version, just to get started and
absolutely.
get familiar with it as
Absolutely.
well. Yeah.
And I would
Yeah.
just say, I suppose, as well, like I would be very, I think it's one thing for every single person here from a people side to be thinking about what your culture and your values say. So if you're talking about innovation and bravery and courage and it's all written all over the walls, and then you guys are not adapting it, like you're the person asking people to join the business and here's our values and here's our culture book. How are you living the culture? How are you living that? And like AI for me reveals the culture at the moment.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Gillian. Great point as well on that. Brendan, for yourself, what's your kind of quick win solution that you have in mind?
Yeah, that's a really interesting conversation, the AI piece. So
Yeah,
I'll veer away from it a little bit, right? So a very simple one, right, is educating our team on what employer branding is, right? So it can be a really quick. A lot of people don't like. So everyone on this call is interested in employer branding, I presume, right? Because they've joined it or are interested in getting a better understanding of it. What I find is that there's a lot of departments in Otonomee, even in the previous companies, work don't understand what employer branding is. They hear it, okay, and they don't know how they can impact it. Okay, so like a really quick thing that people on this call can do is, what do you need from other people to help you with employer branding? Okay, that could be the leadership team, that could be middle management, it can be everyone inside in the organization. So we would have done before quick sessions, can be a half an hour, and it's a chat around what employer branding really is, right? Not just what it is, but actually the impact that it has on the organization and being
yes,
successful, right? And so that can be, as we all know, employer branding is like a really important piece to attract candidates, okay? But it's also a really important one to attract new customers, right? And to win new business, okay? So a really quick one. It doesn't have to be days and days of meeting people and going through slides, right? It's really, I suppose, explaining to people that even though there's a team internally who are responsible for maybe posting something on LinkedIn or replying to comments, everybody is accountable for the brand, okay, and the little things that they can do, like posting and giving them some guidance as to, like, you can do this, and you may not hear anything, and there might be only 20 likes on something that you post, right? But it actually could open up a network that we don't have already. So anyway, really simple one is, like, sit down, explain to people what employer brand actually is, okay, and the
yeah.
role that they can play in it.
That's a really good one, Brendan. It's something actually I think we're going to do ourselves, to be fair as well. Like, that's a really good idea. Definitely something you can do very quickly too. So thanks for that. Kevin, yourself, what's your quick win solution, I suppose, on the Indeed and Glassdoor side?
Cheers, Mark. So I think it's for me, there's 2 points. One extrapolates a little bit on what Gillian mentioned earlier around ChatGPT. So the average job seeker looks at an advert on Indeed or Glassdoor, Mark, for 7 seconds.
Wow.
So if you put almost any job description into ChatGPT, it'll reformat it so that the benefits are much, much closer to the top of the advert. Because at the end of the day, no matter what the employer value proposition is, people come to work to get paid and for the benefit side of it. So if you put it through ChatGPT, as Gillian mentioned, almost always it will list the benefits. It'll give 2 or 3 lines on the company history or the job spec, and then the benefits are next, so that it shows up when job seekers see a preview of the advert, Mark. And that will drastically improve your impression to click-through rate on all of your adverts across the board. Free, takes 2 seconds. You
Yeah.
can combine that then, Mark, with the Indeed analytics to make sure that you're putting in the right keywords and job titles to the job text, so that we're matching up the correct job seekers with what the job is. The second one, Mark, would be to update your job seeker facing content on the Indeed and Glassdoor company pages. What people often don't know is if you have more than 3 reviews on the platform, it automatically links to all of your jobs, Mark. So roughly 70% of your traffic for your jobs, 60% in some cases, but generally 70% will be coming through a mobile phone. And when a job seeker is clicking on a job on Indeed or Glassdoor, Mark, they swipe right and they're brought to your company page. And oftentimes, even for large to enterprise organizations, Mark, there's no content there.
Yeah.
And what we're always trying to encourage clients, and it's a very simple question mark, is when they get to that page, is a job seeker more or less likely to complete the application phase? And oftentimes, if people are telling the truth, they're less likely to finish the application if there's no content there from a company perspective. So again, something quick that has very strong long-term.
100%, 100%. And I think there's probably that whole, like, that head in the sand approach. I know you probably see it, Kevin. I know I see it as well from the client perspective a lot as well, where they just, if they don't look at it, it doesn't exist. But the thing is that Indeed and Glassdoor do exist, just like for hotel companies, TripAdvisor and Booking.com exist and all that too. And you just can't get away from it. So you have to take ownership of it, and you have to kind of lay claim to it as well. So really appreciate that. Thanks so much as well for that too. Look, there's some obviously great ideas there. So we're already only halfway through the webinar, and already there's a lot to implement there as well. But what about the kind of the deeper work, I suppose, like that, the kind that takes a little bit longer, but probably has a more lasting impact as well. So let's move into some of those strategies as well too. I suppose, Gillian, do you want to go first this time? Like, what's your kind of something slow, more time-intensive strategy, but offering long-term benefits?
Yeah, look, I think it's about developing a very strong EVP or PVP, so people value proposition EVP. And I agree with Kevin in terms of, like, you have the pay and the benefits, like, okay, they have to be given, they have to be straight up. I think no matter how many, I haven't looked at research in the last maybe couple of months, but no matter what research has come out over the last few years, they're still there because people, you know, the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy, we need security. We need to feel, you know, we need to feel valued as well. You know, we need to feel like that's, you know, and that's actually interesting. You'd see that from even HubSpot talk about their EVP being growing better. And it's basically, it's about both parties growing. So you grow, we grow as a business, you know. So I think, again, it's about, like, they've worked that really well in, because it is a business. They have to, you know, we're organizations, we're business. Even if we're a charity, we're trying to achieve something with the charity. We're trying to, you know, we have KPIs and objectives. So I think, look, what I would say is about just taking the time to do it. So some people have EVPs, some people, or PVPs, some people might not have them online in terms of who's listening. If you have it, it doesn't get done and left there. Okay. So I think it's about seeing it as a constant piece of work. And the biggest thing I would say is you need to be doing this as a leadership team. Okay. Yeah. So it's about the people department, and I'm sure Brendan is even better talk about this in terms of your role, working with the C-suite, working with the team at the top to really understand what the business objectives are. So we're doing everything together. We're not just in a silo, working on an EVP, working on an employer brand, and coming back and saying, ta-da, here we are. That's not what we're trying to do. Everything should be interwoven together. They should be all aligned together. This is why when we're talking about our business case, it shouldn't even need to happen if we're developing the culture strategy, the EVP. And again, that's slower. It takes time. Map it out. Okay, audit where you currently are, even if you have an EVP, because things are changing. The world is moving, you know, so fast with AI, and the markets are changing, and, you know, COVID's happened. People are, you know, like, there's so much that's happened. So you constantly have to keep on top of it and refresh and look at it, just like you would a value proposition for your customers. Why do people buy from us? Why do people come and work for us? So attraction, but then retention. We want to retain these good people. It costs a lot less to retain them. We want to keep them. We want to get them to train other people. We want them to stay. We want them to grow. We want us to grow. So I think for me, it's really, you know, stepping back and thinking about how have you developed your current EVP if it's there, then looking, saying, is it robust? Do we need to change it? Are we sitting down? Have we got a cultural strategy? Is that in line with the 3-year business strategy, with the vision of the company, with the culture of the company, with the purpose of the country, with the company, with the strategic objectives of the company, which, again, people should be such a big part of that. So for me, it needs to be interwoven into it, and we really need to think about it. An EVP isn't real until people say it, feel it, and act on it. It's not real otherwise. Like, that has to happen. And to build on Brendan's point about, you know, I love that, like, having those moments of stopping and explaining what employer branding is. I do this thing where it's head, heart, hands. You have to make sure people understand, get in, just really let people understand, educate people, then be able to get into their hearts, win their hearts with what we're talking about, get them, because then they'll do that content creation, then they'll stay, then they'll do the referrals, and then give their hands. So equip them equip them with the resources that they need, everybody, to do what they can to help, because it's everybody's job in terms of having a cultural led company. So for me, it's maybe taking a breath, looking at how purposeful and considered you've been in building your internal brand.
Yeah, Gillian, that's a great point. And I love the head, heart, hands thing. I think that's a really good idea, because at least you know you're on the right track then. Like, do they understand and do they have the tools needed to also do the job as well? So it's a really good one too. Kevin, for you, I suppose on something slow, like what's your implementation or something you'd like to get to across?
Yeah, just to touch on Gillian's point earlier as well, Mark. From an application perspective, jobs that have compensation included on them on Indeed and Glassdoor get 2.7 times more applications.
Wow.
So, and that's across millions of jobs, lots of different countries. So there's a proven correlation there between showing the job seeker what the compensation is and allowing them to make an informed decision.
And Kevin, is that going to happen more? Because people talk about this transparency with money, don't they?
Yes. Yeah, I think in a lot of countries, I wouldn't be able to name all of them on the call at the moment, Gillian, but a lot of countries have made it mandatory now to include compensation. And I think we're moving that way too. I think the more informed a job seeker is about their ability to apply to a job, I think you'll see less irrelevant applications. So from an Indeed perspective, Mark, there's two challenges that we're trying to solve from a global perspective, at least for our company. One is job seekers not getting responses from companies. Two is companies getting irrelevant applications. And I believe job seekers having an informed decision, at least from a compensation perspective, will help that. But just to go back to the question on something slow, the biggest thing for me is improving your ratings. So much like travelers, Mark, will avoid that 1 or 2 or 3-star hotel, it's the same for job seekers, right? So if your company is rated 4 stars or 5 stars on Indeed or Glassdoor, the average rating is 3.2, by the way, it will significantly increase or decrease your capacity to get more applications. So when partnered with Indeed and Glassdoor, Mark, we would encourage reviews to be sent out at key points in the job seeker journey. So to capture that really positive employee sentiment. So when somebody is made permanent, when they sign the offer, when they get a bonus, when they're straight back from holidays, there's obviously other points where you wouldn't request reviews, where people maybe mightn't be as positive. The first day back after the new year would be not be the smartest decision.
And Monday, just in general, I suppose.
And Monday. Today would be a great day, actually, because it's sunny and everyone's in great form. But improving your review, Mark, in all seriousness, on Indeed and Glassdoor will dramatically affect your conversion rate across the business.
No, thanks for that, and I think you've just an add-on point to that as well. If you're not too sure as a business where you stand, just look at your competitors. Just look at their Glassdoor and Indeed, and if they're rated higher, using Kevin's words here and what he said, you are missing out on top candidates just because of that simple fact as well. So just a very simple thing to do. I'm just conscious of time as well. Brendan, for yourself, something slow, I suppose, like that. What do you have in mind?
So I'm gonna rob Gillian's win their hearts, right? So I like that phrase, right? So what I have written down, I won't get into it too much, so I'm conscious of the time, is first of all, it's hard to create content about stuff that you don't believe in. Okay, so like it's really important, and Gillian spoke around like the content being relevant to who you are, and I think a lot of companies have this awkward mismatch as to what it's like and what they're portraying externally. Okay, so what I suppose my slow piece is, or my advice around slow is, be clear of what your why as an organization is. So like, why do you exist? Like, what is the reason for you existing? Okay, and because that's where your content should come from. Okay, it's like, why as a company are you there? Okay, what do you care about? And then have a voice and start talking about those things, right? Because if that's who you are, that's what you're going to come across as really passionate about, and that's what people are going to be attracted to. For an example, I think myself and you, Mark, spoke about it like briefly. We're at Otonomee, we're passionate about a lot of things, right? But one of them is, great customer support, right? And supporting brands to do that. And we talk about it a lot internally. We bring it back internally as to like, how does that play out in our everyday lives? Okay, not externally, but internally. Okay, and so we talk about the importance of it. We talk about the importance of the interaction of it. Okay, and then that leads to an employer brand, because we expect all of our team to be very I suppose in tow with that, if that makes sense. Okay, so I suppose it's really, and it's a slow one, right? You really have to, Gillian mentioned around like the leadership team versus like the HR team. It's just a company-wide thing. It's like, who are we? What do we want to be? You know, why are we here? Okay. And then that should be what we're telling the external market. If we don't, and there's a misalignment to that, people will find out when they start. You know, like, so if you tell people that we're this, and 2 months into the job or 1 week into the job, we're very different. Okay, people will see it for their own eyes. Okay, and then that's when your attrition kicks in. That's when your bad reviews kick in. Okay, it's because you've sold something that's not there. So again, won't go on anymore. But like the why do you exist is such an important piece for the employer branding.
No, I appreciate that. It's all about authenticity, isn't it? Really like that. So like, because even if you are a company that's struggling and you don't have maybe a good culture internally for your employees like that too, it can be very difficult to maintain that illusion of positive employer branding, because at some point along the chain, whether it's like people leaving or whether it's, you know, the Indeeds and Glassdoors of the world are going to catch that, and then it's going to be caught as well. So it's just, I think that's a really good one as well. I really appreciate that one too, Brendan. Thanks so much for that. I think, look, so building I think what we've shown there in that kind of little piece is that building a strong brand doesn't happen overnight. And these strategies, I suppose, show how you can create something lasting and meaningful. Finally, we're kind of going to look at like where a little investment or a lot of investment can really accelerate the efforts as well. Kevin, you're first here for this one, like I suppose, like something with a cost. What would you invest, I suppose, money in around employer branding?
So the biggest impact that we see for clients, Mark, from an investment perspective, is purchasing the employer branding hub with Indeed and Glassdoor. They're now sister companies, so they're bought together, Mark. But the first impressions matter, right? So when you go onto your Indeed or Glassdoor page, on the paid version, you can control which is the first review you see. So it's only the first one, so you can't control all of them. You can't delete reviews. That's super important. No matter how much you're spending or how much you want to get rid of a bad review, it has no impact on from a monetary perspective. But you can, if you're really struggling to hire mechanical engineers in County Cork, you can show a really relevant, authentic review from a mechanical engineer down in Cork. So when that person sees it, they're much more likely to finish that application process. And in the interest of time, Mark, I'll push on to one more point. You remove all your competitor employer branding on your profiles. So on Indeed and Glassdoor, if you have an unpartnered profile, partnered profiles can target your brand and use that to retarget candidates that would potentially be in the same field. So perhaps if you're working in a pharma company, you could use that, your adverts right on another pharma company's Glassdoor and Indeed page too.
I mean, that's it's like when you're paying for something like that, like it's an incredible tool, obviously, like that, because you're kind of like literally nabbing potential candidates away from your competitors as well, you know, which is I suppose in that space it's a great tool to have. So thanks so much for that, Kevin. Like, I mean, there's a lot there really between Glassdoor and Indeed and what you can kind of do with it as well. Brendan, for you, I suppose, what's your thing if you had all the money in the world, you know, what would you be spending, or what have you spent it on in Otonomee, or what would you be thinking of spending it on when it comes to employer branding? And
yeah, so I suppose first of all, there's loads of places that you can spend your money for sure. So try to I pick two things, right? One is, I'm always very passionate about this. If you want to make an impact in this space, you have to invest in it. Okay. And so like again, Otonomee as an example, like we have somebody who we've dedicated to internal communications and what we call community specialist. Okay. So it's someone who's thinking about it, who's driving that internally. Because as I said, a big part of us, Otonomee started with no brand, right? It was a startup. Okay. So you have to go from nothing to something, if you know what I mean. And so driving it internally and putting a framework around it and having someone dedicated to it is critical. Otherwise, what will end up happening is it's on everyone's list, and it will be somewhere in the mid to bottom of their list because they'll have other priorities. All right. So again, if you want to impact your employer branding, you need to invest in it. And I'm talking in this case, investing in a person. Okay. The second one that I would give is invest in a technology. You asked Mark around like how do we capture moments in a remote organization? We use a system called WorkVivo. Okay. Best way I can describe it is anyway, if some people are on the call are probably familiar with WorkVivo. It's our company, an Irish company, not so long ago was acquired by Zoom. All right. And it allows you to, the best way I can describe it is an internal Facebook, okay, where people post, they share, they recognize, okay, there's recognition of people's tenure, of birthdays, you know, of moments, of meetings, okay, you call out people on values. So again, that investment to be able to capture it, no matter the location that you're in, no matter the time zone that you work on, is a key piece for us. And it's content immediately, all right? It's literally, I've now captured content. To Gillian's point, it's employee created content, okay, and it's there to use, okay, and it obviously helps from a cultural perspective. It's a huge impact in culture again, which again from me is embedded in the employer brand piece. So again, a person and technology will be probably my two big call outs.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that, Brendan. We appreciate it. Gillian, the last to you, best to last. So what have you got for us in this space?
So yeah, I'll build on maybe Brendan's point first. So definitely we'll say expertise for sure. So that can be internal and external. And I think absolutely internal. And that just highlights the importance of it when you invest in a person like you guys have done, which is amazing. I also think there's a piece here with the marketing recruitment. Okay, so there's the marketing, and then we talked about the senior team and all of it being employer branding. But there's a constant kind of like seesaw that can happen as well between people department and marketing department, because marketing are really strong at creative and communications, and people know the people side of the business. And so what you're seeing now is marketing recruiters. There isn't actually, it's interesting, there's not many courses around that. I think people kind of end up that way, but I think we're going to see more of that being that kind of marketing recruiter, marketing, people marketing person. So maybe not necessarily recruitment, but in that people space, and joining those two, because that's like the magic is there. So just again, just something around that internally, I think is critical. Experts externally, so like you don't always have them inside. That's why we have the gig economy. People have, you know, contractors, freelancers. Like it's amazing out there, the creatives that are there that you can tap in when you need them, and understanding and creating a little black book of brilliant external people to maybe do a great video or a great this or a great that. You can just tap in and use the people that you need and stretch that budget that you have, but you still need to invest. And I know it's cost we're talking about, really, it's the mindset of investing. I think, you know, if it, again, your EVP is struggling, hiring strategists. So making sure, again, so you can think sometimes about, you know, designers or creators and employer branding from that perspective, but get that strategy right. So if sometimes you can't see the wood from the trees, having an external person who can do that is important. So obviously I'm coming from that being my side.
Yes, the plug, yeah, absolutely, yeah, for sure.
But even like if it's nothing to do with me, there's amazing people out there who can allow you to step back. You know, have that helicopter view, get people in a room and ask that hard questions, because I don't stand at the water cooler. I don't have any. So you need, you know, sometimes it's good having someone external come in from that perspective. Training, then again, so kind of similar to some of the points we said. So what training is, maybe you need to invest in some kind of training. And then lastly, AI. So if I just bring it back to AI, making sure you pay for some of the AI platforms. If you're on ChatGPT, if you're testing yourself, so you've got some maybe forward-thinking people here on the call, maybe the company has invested or non-invested, but if you're dabbling yourself, if you're putting sensitive documents in, make sure you're paying. Like ChatGPT is 20 euros for an individual per month. It's the best 20 euros that I've ever spent. You know, then you can go into the company version, having your own, that can help you with your own career as well. But I'd say, and then make sure you press off the sharing of the information to the other bots. So make sure in your data center, you're turning that off. But like little investments like that cost, but that's a serious investment as well. And then getting a business case to maybe go, how do we invest more into AI, and bringing it to the board in relation to why we would do that.
No, thank you so much for that, Gillian. And look, that brings us up to around the 38-minute mark. So we're just over time, but we're doing great. So look, thanks so much for that. I know there's a lot of content there. I think our audience probably head is spinning now, like all their ideas and trying to figure it all out. Like I do have some questions kind of coming in, I suppose, like that I want to just ask. Some of them are specific as well. I'm just going to go to it here. Also, sorry, before I do the questions, we did ask a poll as well. And the poll was like, what are the current challenges facing your employer branding journey right now within the organization? And it's kind of a split really between leadership buy-in, standing out in the market, and we don't have any defined employer branding strategy just yet. No one voted for EVP or messaging clarity, and no one voted for lack of internal resources. So kind of an interesting mix really, I suppose, like that in this snapshot as we have it here. One of the questions I have, I suppose, Gillian, one question I have specifically as well is like, and especially because it ties into the polls, like, leadership isn't bought in. Like, you know, like when you see the results of employer branding, it can take years, months, decades, really, that kind of way. Just like how, if you're a HR person and you're into this and you know it'll make a difference, how are you getting the leadership team involved? Because if the culture is not there, it's kind of hard to really implement this over time. I'm just curious from your own perspective, from what you've seen as well, even specifically, if you've got an example of that too,
Yeah, no, and look, it's a hard one. I think just even on the poll there that came up, it said that people feel like they didn't have an employer brand, was it? That they don't have a defined one as well?
Yeah,
Well, everybody has definitely an employer brand, but again, the definition of it are being fully considered. So that's even a danger in itself because it's there, it's out there for people. It's like we talked about hotels or whatever, like, it's the perception, it's the reputation of the business and what it's like to work there, and be an employee there and be a stakeholder belong to it. So that's a really interesting one. I think from the leadership buy-in, I mean, I've sat down with Excel sheets, like just paper and pen and Excel sheets, and data is everything. And like, I suppose for me, my heart side will go, you want the leaders to, because they believe in it and they want to believe in it, but sometimes you have to, even though they might believe in it and talk really good talks, but then it needs to translate all the way down, and then you feel like it's not, and you feel like you're not really been heard. So you need data is going to always help you. Proof points are always going to help you. So this is like, the proof is in the pudding, not in us. I'm not saying the pudding, it's in the brand, in what you're doing, in what you're not doing. So what can you say? When you bring up the data, what's happening on your website? What's happening with Indeed? Show the data. Like if when we did this and we showed what our salary is, when we showed transparency, when we showed this, if we do more of this, can we get better quality candidates coming in? Then we're going to have better people with us. They're going to stay longer, and in the end of the day, that is amazing for the business.
Yeah,
business
agreed.
Does better. So it's EX by CX, is impact, is money, is revenue, and you need to speak in data terms. Don't have massive dashboards, because marketing and HR, we can get caught in dashboards and then we've lost the board. So top points, key KPIs, measure them, come back in, report on them, show a business case. If we keep losing people, if our turnover stays this amount, this is what it's costing us.
Yeah. Agreed.
Now, if we do this, and this, which will take time, and believe in me and trust me, and then I suppose it's your personal brand within the business to be making sure that your voice is being heard at the leadership table. And as Brendan said, I love, it sounds like an Otonomee, you guys you're all together as one group. That's the ultimate, that's the success.
Yeah.
It's not the them and us and obviously get bigger, it's harder. But I just think data, proof points, get confident, get your data together, report back on it, maybe sit down with yourself and your team and figure out, okay, maybe it's over the next 3 to 6 months. How do we bring this business case together? So then you're not knocking on the door tomorrow, you're knocking on 3 or 6 months' time. So be really strategic, be proof point orientated, be data point, and bring it back to the success of the business.
Yeah, it's hard to argue data as well, I suppose, like that. And when you can show the trends are going upwards into the green, like this is all very, very positive stuff as well.
Mark, can I just add to that as well?
Yeah, go for it, Brendan.
So a lot of what Gillian said is spot on there. I think probably goes back to one of my initial points, is in like, I think there's an honest conversations with whoever the decision maker is, whether it's the CEO or whether it is like understanding, why there isn't investment in the space, right? Because sometimes, again, sometimes we think CEOs know everything, right? Or whoever, right? Or managing director, right? Sometimes it's a piece that actually they don't understand the value of it, okay? And so to Gillian's point, the best way of displaying that is through data, but a real honest conversation around, employer branding, okay, with the decision maker is a very, very important piece. And so sometimes if you go in with all the data first without having this conversation, you're already kind of behind the if you get what I mean, so honest conversation. Are we do we understand, to Gillian's point, is we have an employer brand, whether we believe it or not, people have a perception about our brand, maybe measuring where it's at now, and then understanding, do we actually want to, look at a competitor? Do we want to be above them as an employer? Are we happy where we're at now? That conversation is an important one, because you'll never persuade someone to do something, first of all, that they maybe don't understand, or secondly, don't want to achieve, especially when it comes to like investment. So That's my take.
No, thanks for that, Brendan. Really appreciate that too. I have a question for you, Kevin. It's specifically on, I suppose, authenticity around the kind of reviews as well. And the question is, how do you kind of put forward a request for reviews without sounding like, you're trying to manipulate the scoring, right? Like, because you're not like, you don't want to be, you want to get the score up, but maybe there is an internal issue, that is a longer term fix, but you're also trying to get the scores into. It's just like, I suppose, how would you go about it with a company in that situation where they feel a bit unauthentic about asking people for a review internally in the business?
Yeah, good question, Mark. I think what a lot of, it's probably not publicly available information, but your reviews on Indeed and Glassdoor, and I'm sure the same for TripAdvisor and other websites, they're actually heavily weighted towards time. So a 5-star review has a much bigger impact on improving your score than a 5-star review from 3 years ago. And that's marked because companies evolve. A company might be better in 3 years' time, or it might be worse. And our platform tries to give job seekers the best representation of what it's like to work there now. Indeed and Glassdoor have a built-in function where we can request reviews at specific points in the job seeker journey. And I don't think it's disingenuous to say that if you're requesting a review from somebody who's passed probation, who is probably very happy, or perhaps somebody who's got a raise or somebody who's been made permanent, all you're doing is being strategic on it. You can have a blanket approach where you request reviews from everybody in a business unit once a quarter or every second quarter. It just depends on what your long-term strategy is. If you want to move the dial faster, I would be more strategic about it. If you want to move the dial slower, then perhaps reviewing them at a set cadence across a larger group is the way to do it.
No, I appreciate that, because again, like, the motivation is there for people leaving negative reviews because they want to say something angry, while it's not that people aren't thinking about, saying nice things about their company, but they're just not going on Indeed to do it, because people don't go on Indeed if they're not looking for work, right? Most of the time anyways, that kind of way too. So that's it there. So look, I'm conscious of time. We're just over the 45-minute mark. There's a few more questions coming in, but I promise you all that I will send them on to the speakers and we will get answers to those questions as well. I want to just extend a heartfelt thank you to Gillian, Brendan, and Kevin for participating in this session. I know it takes time out of their day as well, so we really do appreciate it. I also want to thank the audience for taking part in this, and also the numbers stayed the same, so people were engaged all the way through, so I really appreciate that as well. I just encourage you all, I suppose, to implement some of these strategies and tips that we've shared. We will send out the video, we will send out a report in the coming weeks as well, so that'll make it easier to remind you also, and also maybe to give it around to other departments as well, or to the leadership team too. And we'll also invite you to stay connected for future events and resources that we have. And thank you for participating, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. That's it, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks so much. Have a great day,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Take
Thanks
care.
a million,
Bye,
guys.
bye.